Start out, I would just like to ask you guys a couple questions, and you can actually write these responses on the back of the sheet I just gave you. So, actually, everyone close their eyes. And when I ask you these questions, look down deep inside of you, into your personal space and your personal experiences and your past experiences and your future experiences, and really meditate hard on these things. So the first question I'd like to ask is, what one thing could you do that you aren't doing now, that if you did on a regular basis from here on out, would make a tremendous positive difference in your personal life? You can open your eyes now and write one thing down. Everyone write that down. So now I'd like to ask a second question. You don't have to close your eyes for this one. But what one thing now would you do in your school life that would make a tremendous difference that you aren't doing already? Something feasible. You guys can just look up when you're done. Okay, so the reason I'm asking you guys these questions is because they get at the heart of what Habit 3 is all about. Covey calls it putting first things first, which is pretty self-explanatory. But the reason I asked it to you is because this habit is all about self-management and where our self-management motivation comes from, in a sense. Just to refresh your guys' memories, well, habit 3 is the culmination of habits 1 and 2. It's what comes out of and to refresh your guys' memories now, habit 1 was about self-awareness and taking yourself out of your own space and your own body, which is one thing that separates us from anyone that isn't human, which is what separates from animals. Habit 2 was realizing and imagining one's potential or your potential and being able to look forward and down a path and seeing where you are and seeing where you need to be and the ways to get there. And the ways to get there is what Habit 3 is. And it's the personal fruit, it's the planning and the day-by-day nitty-gritty things that we all should and need to do to get to that certain point. So as Monica drew up on the board, this is the time management matrix that's in the book. And it's at the heart of, again, of what Habit 3 is all about and what Covey's trying to convey to all of us. So quadrant 1 is people who live their lives in quadrant 1 are crisis driven and they're deadline driven, just like all of us have been at one time. No one can say that they've never been doing something or their motivation has been because it's due soon or because if I don't do it, something else bad will happen. This quadrant 1 is where most people find their motivation, which is bad, and which is what Covey doesn't want us to do. The third quadrant down here is activities in our daily lives that are not important, but that are urgent, like phone calls, just daily interruptions. And the thing with quadrant 3 is that even though it's urgent, urgency is only because you know other people's expectations, and it's usually based on like social expectations and what others want from you, but not what you should be giving out. Quadrant 4 is things that aren't important and that aren't urgent. Think of anything like video games. In the grand scheme of things, I'm not saying video games aren't important because, well. But they're just trivial everyday things that aren't about like on the path of life. So quadrant 2 is what Covey's talking about throughout the whole chapter, and it's the foundation. It's the foundations of your daily living. It's what you need to do to become a more effective personal person in dealing with others and in dealing with your time and how your morals play out in your life. Anyone that's ever been successful at anything, sports stars, people in the business world, they didn't just get there because they wished it. They got there because of all the behind the scenes things. The prevention of crises, which is what quadrant 1 is about, building up relationships with others, and the production capability activities that we need to be that more effective person. Habit 3 and habit 1, that self-awareness and that time management go hand in hand with each other, because it takes a lot of proactivity coming from habit 1 to be an effective quadrant 2 type person. So that's my bit.
So as Marco said, we want to focus on quadrant 2 to be an effective person. And that means to know your core, to know your principles, to know who you are, and so that you are not shaken, you're not wavered by things that come up to you that seem important or of that sort. And so you need to be able to know your priorities. You need to be able to know how to say no and when to say yes. And to do that, he says time management. Covey really expresses that time management is a key factor, and to organize and to execute around your priorities, to be able to know when to focus on your priorities and when these are okay. And so an organizer is a great tool to take with you wherever you go that has your goals in mind, that it's seen, you can see your goals to be remembered, and it will help you to balance your life so you don't get distracted. So you make sure that you are fulfilling all aspects of your life, so you stay healthy, or you're going to a kid's soccer game rather than just focusing on yourself. And it helps you to prevent busy work as well, and making sure that you're keeping your personal vision or mission statement and your values all coherent and united together. And so in order for an organizer to work, you have to have a more intrinsic growth in you. You have to be able to want that discipline, and so you need to self-manage yourself. And you can do this. You do this through 4 factors. You identify your roles in your life, such as being a teacher, or you're a student, or you're what position you play in sports, or you're a potter's clay leader, you're a brother or a daughter, and then you can set your goals within those roles and your mission statement, who you want to become, and making sure that you can schedule that in, making sure that your roles, like you can schedule in what you want your roles to, how long you want your roles to be throughout the week, how long you spend your time in with those roles. And so he says a lot of people like to organize day by day, but there's 4 different there's 4 different levels of organizing, and we want to get to the 4th one, where that is more in depth, and it takes, it's more about a weekly organizer. So you are focused on more on your long-term goal, or just at least by planning out your week, it helps you to think back to who you want to become, who you want to accomplish throughout the week, and you're not just distracted by the day-by-day problems, and you're not just in the moment. And so he says, the more your weekly goals are tied into the wider framework of your correct principles and into a personal mission statement, the greater increase in the effectiveness you will be. And so it's not just about keeping your schedule, it's not just making the perfect schedule, it is about fitting in your priorities and who you want to be, and that also includes your relationships. So you need to leave some time, free space open, to able to be flexible with that. You need to be flexible with who you are, because life comes at you many times and you don't know what happens. And so it's, a lot of times people get really stuck on fitting to their schedule. But it's when you have your deeper values inside of you, when you really are principle centered, then your schedule becomes more subordinate to you, and your values become more subordinate to your values. That with integrity you can know how to adapt, be flexible, and not feel guilty of not meeting your schedule or something like that. And so with that, relationships are very important, and we need to realize that we need to be effective with our relationships with people, but efficiency with time and things. And a lot of people get that mixed up. You need to be just efficient with a lot of stuff, but you can't be efficient with your relationship. And yeah, and so how to realize how good of a management person you are, because habit 3 is more about managing, whereas habit 1 is about leadership. He says that effective delegation is effective management. And so because you're not being a leader, you're not taking control of everything, but you're allowing to let go and give it to other people to take control, and so that you can do greater things. You can put your energy more into other activities, and therefore you have a greater effect and get more done and stuff. And so there's 2 different kinds of delegation. There's a gopher delegation, which is just straight ahead, just one-on-one, and it's all about the methods and just telling them what not to do and stuff, and that just doesn't really help at all, because they don't have the person you're delegating to has no independence and doesn't really care at all about what they're doing. Whereas stewardship delegation gives your appreciation to the steward's self-awareness and their imagination and their conscience and their free will. It focuses on the results rather than the methods. And there's a mutual understanding and commitment between you two that to keep the expectations of your desired results, your guidelines, your resources, accountability, and your consequences. It enables you to bring out your trust in one another, and this trust is what brings out greater motivation. If the steward has no trust in him, if he doesn't trust in himself, or he thinks you don't have any trust in him, he's not going to be motivated to keep going on this, and he'll just follow more into these things, and he won't have that principle centered, that motivation to keep you more disciplined to keep going. And he'll become his own boss, governed by conscience that contains commitment to the agreed upon desired result. So for example, how many of you are messy people? I am too, for sure. And for example, I've had 2 different roommate friendships, or I had 2 different roommates. One, we had this clear expectation of how